So, good evening and welcome to you all. Nice to see a good group of us here this evening. So, very significant time, first with the celebration of the life of a great American, a great soul, a great being, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We celebrate today, and he's going to be very much at the center of what I want to talk about this evening. And also a transfer of power, and that I'm sure, I know for myself is not, what I wanted to see happen, the outcome of the election, and a lot of, and it feels on one level that some, I would say, kind of incongruity between the two of kind of what Dr. King stood for and what is being promised and already being enacted by the new administration. And it feels like a kind of clash in some ways. But then the more I reflected on it, the more I thought, it's actually very appropriate. There's a, and it comes to the kind of theme of what I want to talk about today, because at the heart of Dr. King, I'm not getting into the talk now, I'm just kind of a few introductory words, but at the heart of Martin Luther King's vision was the vision really of a beloved community. And in the beloved community, no one is excluded. It includes everybody, and it has to include those who are the oppressors, even in the, in the 50s and 60s, the KKK and the white supremacists, that the solution, a solution has to include us all. So it's appropriate today, I think, to invite that sense of inclusivity, even though there's a sense of, perhaps in many of us, of wanting to resist a lot, but to still hold that vision. And as I'll be talking about today, it's at the very heart of the Dharma vision, and particularly the path of what's called the Bodhisattva, being committed to the awakening of all beings. So the talk I'll be giving this evening will be on the Bodhisattva Path to the beloved community. It's kind of the overall theme. So having said that, just want to welcome everyone. And if you would like to share anything in the chat, as we begin, of just how you're doing, how you're feeling today, it'd be lovely to hear from folks. And entirely up to you. And I think what we'll do is we'll begin with a meditation, maybe about 10 minutes or so, just to help us kind of settle and arrive. Then I'll share the talk, the reflection this evening, and then hopefully have time for a guided meditation at the end, after the talk, and hopefully if there's time for some sharing as well at the end. So maybe just kind of invite you to sit in a way that's comfortable and relaxed. Come into a relaxed posture, feeling the body on the chair or the cushion, whatever you're in contact with. Just inviting a posture that's relaxed and at the same time alert, dignified, taking your seat. Letting your eyes close if that's comfortable, or just keeping a soft, unfocused gaze a little bit ahead of you. You might just put aside the thoughts about what's going on elsewhere, or what happened earlier, or what might happen later. And just allow yourself to be as fully present as you can right now. You might take a few longer, deeper breaths just to help you arrive and settle. Nice deep in breath. A long, slow out breath, releasing, letting go on the out breath. Breathing in, calming the body. Breathing out, calming the mind. And letting your breathing help you settle as much as you can and arrive. Just being here. And when you're ready, letting the breath come into its natural rhythm. Just open to whatever is present right now. Whatever bodily feelings are present, just letting them come, letting them be, letting them go in their own time. Whatever mood or emotions or mind states are present, see if you can make space for whatever is here. As the poet Rumi says, welcome the guests, even if they're a crowd of sorrows. Treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. Just making room for whatever is present right now. And you might just let your attention rest on your breathing as a kind of home base where you just rest your attention. Maybe at the nostrils or the chest, belly rising and falling. Letting your breathing ground you and help you ride the waves of any experiences you might be having. Just letting them come and go. And just feeling us all together here in community. You know, this Sangha, this beloved community, beings committed to waking up. You know, however each of us might express it, just wanting to live with greater freedom and peace, compassion. Just finishing with this meditation from Muhyiddin Ibn al-Arabi. There was a time I would reject those who were not of my faith, but now my heart has grown capable of taking on all forms. It is a pasture for gazelles, an abbey for monks, a table for the Torah, Kaaba for the pilgrim. My religion is love. Whichever the route love's caravan shall take, that shall be the path of my faith. My religion is love. Whichever the route love's caravan shall take, that shall be the path of my faith. Take your time opening your eyes and coming back into the group, kind of the outward focus, and again welcoming everyone. Thank you, Ellie, for hosting, and Shazzy, and thank you everyone for being here today. You know, I was saying earlier that you know, in some level it felt kind of somewhat jarring to have these two events on the same day, but it feels, you know, when I think about it, it feels karmically appropriate, you know, that our hearts, you know, are invited to be open enough and large enough to include all of those who we disagree with, particularly at this time where, you know, I think many of us feel challenged by what, you know, the direction that things are going in. It's very helpful, I think, to reflect on, you know, this, you know, it's a hard time, where it's a difficult time we're living in, but, you know, others before us, you know, have lived through equally hard or even harder times than we're living through now. And I'm thinking, you know, I've been reading the last book that Dr. King wrote in the year before he was murdered. His book, Where Do We Go From Here? It was January of 1967. And he was, you know, in the midst of the intense kind of period of, you know, post the triumphs of the civil rights, you know, the mid-60s, and then going into Chicago and organizing there and all the challenges of that. And then coming out against the Vietnam War, which kind of put him, you know, in a, you know, much more clearly in opposition to the Johnson administration then. And you know, being called on to, you know, talk in a million different places. And he took the time in January of 1967 to go to Jamaica with suitcases full of books and papers to write a book, to really reflect on, you know, the challenges of the time. And the book he wrote, he called Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community. And you know, the book was written 58 years ago, my math is right, 58 years ago, and it's a book that, you know, really speaks to the time we're in as well right now, the time of the challenges that we face. And I'll be sharing some from that book, from the book today, and you know, other things that talks and sermons from Dr. King. But just to begin, I mean, again, to say that what I want to explore today is, you know, how do we meet these times that we're living in, these difficult times, these challenging times that we're living in, and how can the Dharma, the teachings and practices of the Buddha and other wisdom teachings, certainly include Dr. King in those as well. How can these teachings and practices support us, fortify us, you know, help us work with the challenging emotions that we're dealing with? You know, it might be fear, it might be anger, for some it might be despair, grief, a whole range of different emotions. How do we meet those without, you know, just kind of shutting down and kind of curling up into a ball and, you know, hoping it will all end? You know, how do we respond wisely, compassionately, courageously in these times? And that's kind of the invitation, I think, for us as, you know, however we define ourselves in terms of practitioners, but as you know, as practitioners and as caring human beings, you know, who want to live together, you know, who don't want to live in, you know, a highly divided, stratified society, you know, in the different ways it's divided. And what I'm going to be speaking to really is how the Dharma teachings and practices and the teachings and the writings and the life really of Dr. Martin Luther King really come together in this amazing way, you know, particularly in Dr. King's vision of the beloved community, the community where everyone is excluded, that, you know, there can't be, you know, winners and losers and, you know, meet the new boss the same as the old boss. You know, you get rid of one group and then another group comes to power. That it has to include us all. And that's really the heart of the Buddhist teachings as well. So, you know, the starting point, you know, in Dharma teachings is always really to start where we are. And where we are is not an easy place right now. And to start by recognizing that, not to be in denial about it or wishful thinking, but recognizing where we are. You know, I'll just name a few things, and we could probably all name many things. You know, we're one statistic that kind of really stands out for me is around the enormous levels of inequality in our world. The 26 richest people in the world own as much wealth as the poorest 3.8 billion. That's billion with a B. 26 human beings, 3.8 billion human beings. The kind of the levels of inequality there. That's 1 billionaire or whatever, illion, you know, the trillionaires, whatever. One of the richest people has a wealth equivalent to worldwide to 150 million people. We're also living with, as we know, with a deeply divided society, and where the divisions are being deepened for political and economic purposes as well. You know, they're deliberately being, you know, people set against each other and vulnerable communities and individuals being targeted. We looked worldwide, between 40 and 70% of the world's population live under authoritarian regimes. You know, so our world, you know, we're not in a great place. You know, if we look at the climate crisis, you know, last year we went above the 1.5 degrees Celsius, you know, agreed in the Paris Agreement. You know, already, you know, that was, you know, and that was just from 2015. In this last year, we went the temperatures rose 1.5 degrees. And we have an administration that maybe even today or tomorrow or this week will pull us out of the Paris Agreement, and committed to more fossil fuel use and all of the consequences of that, from the LA fires to the to the hurricanes and the destruction and the people leaving their homes, etc. So all of these and many more, and all the indications are that these conditions, are likely to get worse in the coming years. We'll wake up and there'll be something else. So how do we hold all this? How do we respond? What the Dharma, the Buddha's teachings and practices, tell us is that we have to live together in a different way. We have to both transform our own hearts and change the way we relate to each other and live together in the world. We've seen changes and many good things happening. I'm not wanting to put forward just a pessimistic picture, because I think what we're really talking about is the hope, the hope of doing things in a different way. But at the heart of the Buddha's teachings is the knowing that we have to change our own hearts. I remember 25 years ago, a great spiritual teacher, Mahagosananda, who was known as the patriarch of Cambodia, and he organized peace walks across Cambodia in the years immediately following the Pol Pot genocide in Cambodia. And there was a campaign at that time, an international campaign to ban landmines. And he came in to support that campaign. And I remember him standing on the steps of the Capitol, and a small Asian monk from Cambodia, and he said, the words he said were, before we can eradicate the landmines from the earth, we have to eradicate the landmines from our own hearts. We have to eradicate we have to take the landmines from our own hearts. And this to me speaks of the kind of, he's not saying don't get rid of the landmines from the earth, but he's saying we have to really begin with ourselves. We have to begin by transforming our own hearts, dealing with our own afflictions, because otherwise, if we don't deal with things within ourselves, we just act them out on the world. There's a great saying from Blaise Pascal, all of humanity's misfortunes come from the man's or humans' inability to sit quietly in a room alone. All of our misfortunes, all of our afflictions come from the inability to sit quietly in a room alone. When we're not able to do what we did, to sit quietly in a room, then what we tend to do is we take our emotions and our mind states and we act them out on the world. We act out our fears, we blame others. If we only get rid of these bad people, then we'll be okay. We've probably heard that somewhere before. So the Buddha's teachings and other wisdom traditions teach us practices to be able to open to the challenging mind states and emotions that arise and meet them with kindness and acceptance, so that we don't just act them out on the world and on others. And also they help, these teachings and practices give us the skills to be able to live together, to see each other as, with dignity and with respect, and to resolve differences peacefully. And this really is the heart as well of Martin Luther King's teachings and vision. And within the Buddha's teachings, there's a particularly skillful and powerful path, which is known as the Bodhisattva Path. And it's a path where we commit ourselves to transforming our own hearts and bringing compassion into the world to alleviate suffering. So the vision is of awakening ourselves, waking up to let go of clinging and to find freedom from suffering, and to commit to the awakening of all beings. And in the historical kind of understanding of the Bodhisattva path, somebody awakens but chooses to stay within the realm of suffering. It's called samsara, or the endless wandering, to stay in this realm until all beings are liberated. So it's this very kind of aspirational, visionary commitment. I'll just give you one example of the commitment, and people can make this commitment collectively together or individually as like, this is how I want to live my life. I want to transform my own heart, and I want to live with compassion in the world. Wherever it's the need is greatest, that's where I will go. And this is an expression of the Bodhisattva path. Sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them all. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to eradicate them all. The gates of the Dharma are limitless. I vow to enter them all. The Buddha's way is inconceivable. I vow to attain it. So it's kind of like, in a way, it's a bit like the impossible dream. It's like none of us are going to liberate all beings in reality, but it's really, I see it as really a kind of a vision of commitment. I want to give everything I can to alleviate suffering. It's that commitment. It's seeing the good in everybody. I'll talk more about that in a moment. So the Bodhisattva path, just to say the words themselves, Bodhisattva is a compound word. Bodhi means awakening, same root as the Buddha, the awakened one. Same root as a bud, a flower budding, same Indo-European kind of origin, budding, awakening. So Bodhi is awakening, Sattva is being. So a Bodhisattva is an awakening being, somebody who's awakened or is committed to waking up and healing suffering. And the Bodhisattva path invites us really to a different way of being in the world. It's a way of being that brings compassion and the wish to alleviate suffering into the center of our consciousness and the center of our intentions. This becomes our main purpose for us in life, rather than being driven by self-interest, by craving, by grasping, by aversion. Rather than fueling those qualities, we choose, very intentionally to say, this is what I want to do in the world. I want to commit to the alleviation of suffering, to bringing compassion into the world, and to make that commitment, however we want to do it, whether we want to do it in a kind of collective way or individually, just say, this is what is meaningful to me. This is what is really important to me. So it's really about the inner and the outer. It's about transforming our own heart, doing the inner work to do that, and working to change the world, to awaken all beings, but, in a more secular way, to help heal the suffering of the world, wherever it might be found, whether it's, defending immigrants who are under threat, or whether it might be helping bring peace in a particular part of the world, or whether it might be just in one's work, helping as a therapist or a teacher or a social worker, or just any other kind of human being to help someone in need, help a person or a community in need. So this kind of unity of the inner and the outer, this for me is kind of the missing piece. It's the piece that, for thousands of years we've done things in a way we think, as the words of the old Who song, as I mentioned, meet the new boss, and same as the old boss. We get rid of one thing, and there's a vision. If we changed the arrangements, we changed the institutions, we changed the laws, then, then things would be okay, things would be better. And maybe in some ways they might be better for a while, but without changing our own hearts, then we will get back into that cycle of division where, those who feel left out feel they have to come back and fight to, get back in power again. And really, the only way out of this that I see is a solution that includes everyone. And that's really what Dr. Martin Luther King was speaking about in the, he spoke about the beloved community, creating a community where everyone is included. And I'll come talk about that in a minute. And so coming to the Bodhisattva path is grounded, it kind of is based on the understanding, like the metaphor we often use is that just as a bird needs two wings to fly, so our practice needs two wings. It needs the wing of wisdom and the wing of compassion. Without wisdom, compassion will be, can be sentimental. We can get overloaded. We can not recognize where boundaries are needed. So we need compassion, but we need wisdom. We need the clarity of wisdom. And we need the heart of compassion to be able to come together to really commit to building a community where all beings are treated with dignity, where a society and a world, really, as Dr. King spoke about, where poverty is eradicated, where forgiveness and reconciliation are, the ways of kind of resolving differences and conflicts rather than through violence and through conflict. So the wisdom component really is as it expresses itself in the Bodhisattva path, is recognizing that all beings have Buddha nature, that everyone has the capacity to awaken, without exception, the new president included, that everyone has the capacity, everyone has, sometimes talked about Buddha nature. We're not, there's not like this group, the good people or the chosen people, and these are the bad people, and they're irretrievably bad, and these people are the chosen or they're the good people. The difference, the meaningful difference is between whether we have trained our heart and trained our mind. That's what's meaningful. So if we've trained the heart in compassion, loving kindness, equanimity, and these qualities, then we're going to live in that way and we're going to act in that way in the world. But if out of fear or trauma or some other reason we get, we take another path, a path where we think, well, if we don't get them first, they'll get us. So, we've got to attack them, or we've got to grab everything we can get. And it's a dog-eat-dog world. If we have that kind of view, then that's going to be reinforced. And that's, and then we'll act unskillfully, we'll cause harm in the world. So that's the meaningful difference, whether we have trained the heart, trained the mind, whether we have found a path really to freedom, and we could look at all beings like, hopefully for many of us, we probably feel that we have found a path, or maybe, or kind of entering a path where we might live in the world in a different way, with greater kindness, with greater acceptance and compassion, peace. And that those who are causing harm haven't yet found that path. You know, it's not that they're other or excluded. They're part of the beloved community. So with that kind of underpinning of wisdom, what naturally flows out of that is compassion. You know, if everybody is an awakening being and everyone is part of this, the beloved community, what we're called on to do is to alleviate suffering wherever it's found. You know, so this foundation of wisdom and compassion is what the Bodhisattva path rests on. And then there are particular qualities that we can cultivate and that we need to cultivate if we commit to this path. Jack Kornfield, in one of his wonderful books, This is the Wise Heart, Teachings of Buddhist Psychology, etc., the wise heart, he talks about 3 qualities of a bodhisattva. The bodhisattva really starts, you know, by accepting the truth of life as it is, you know, not wishful thinking, oh, I wish things were different than they are. Really, it's a sense of saying, okay, this is, you know, a hard-headed, honest, truthful look at where we are, you know, and accepting that and saying, this is, not saying it's good or right, but saying this is how things are right now. And from there, we can work to bring about change. Don Juan, of some of you may be familiar with Carlos Castaneda's books of Don Juan, the shaman, you know, teacher shaman in that. He speaks about, he says, the average person, the spiritual warrior, he says, which we could take as another phrase for the bodhisattva, the spiritual warrior treats everything as a challenge. You know, whatever comes up, this is the challenge we're facing at the moment. Today, I think, you know, we can look at the new administration coming in as a challenge, not kind of bad, wrong, shouldn't be like this. This is a challenge. How are we going to respond? As Dr. King said, where do we go from here? Chaos or community? You know, accept it as a challenge. And he says, Don Juan says, the everyday person, the average person, treats everything as a blessing or a curse. You know, it's a blessing. Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, that's terrible. Rather than, you know, the bodhisattva, this is challenge. This is what we're facing right now. So that's the first thing. You know, we don't necessarily choose where we fight the battle. I'm talking about that in a spiritual sense rather than a military sense, but how everyone see that of like the challenge, you know, we don't necessarily choose the ground of that. You know, many of us would have chosen a different situation to be celebrating today on Dr. Martin Luther King's Day. But this is where things are. So beginning with acceptance and then working to transform ourselves, to transform our own hearts. You know, the Buddha spoke about, you know, our practice as being to abandon the unskillful, you know, to abandon qualities that lead us to suffering, you know, unexamined anger, fear, rage, cruelty, blame, you know, these are kind of take us down an unhelpful path, an unskillful path to suffering. So abandon those. So we do that, you know, we do it in meditation by seeing states arising, but rather than clinging to them and following them, we let them come and go. We let them come and go. We see the ultimate emptiness of those states if we don't get caught up in them. They can just come and go. So abandon the unskillful and cultivate the good. Cultivate qualities that will lead to happiness, well-being, and freedom. Cultivate compassion, generosity, gratitude, loving kindness, equanimity, you know, a whole range of qualities that, you know, the awakening factors, different lists within the Buddha's teachings that help open our hearts, connect us with others, connect us with life, and ultimately help lead us to freedom from suffering. So these two qualities, we bring about a transformation in our own heart so that we can engage in the world. And we're obviously doing this kind of in a simultaneous way. We're not kind of necessarily doing all this on a 3-year retreat or in a monastery and then coming back into the world. We're doing it both in our practice, meditation practice, and in our lives. So really cultivating freedom within ourselves. That's the second quality. And the third one is to envision actions and a path of liberation for oneself, for one's community and one's world, and committing to those ends. So this is a really key part of the Bodhisattva Path, is envisioning a path of moving forward. And Jack says about envisioning, he says, envisioning has enormous power. With our vision and imagination, we can help create the future. Envisioning sets our direction, marshals our resources, makes the unmanifest possible. Makes what isn't yet in existence, makes it possible. So that sense of accepting the ground of the struggle that we're engaged in, transforming our own hearts, and then envisioning a path of transformation that will lead to greater freedom and will lead to the beloved community, lead to a world where we can live together in a peaceful and respectful way. So this, just to outline that kind of vision of the Bodhisattva Path. Maybe I'll just pause for a second and kind of invite us to think, what would that mean for you in terms of your life? What would anything need to change to make a commitment to that inner transformation and that engagement in the world? In the world in the broad sense, doesn't have to be necessarily political or social, could be more in individual kind of ways. But what might it look like? What might it look like for your practice? What might it look like for your engagement with others? And so that's an invitation just to kind of hold, not to respond to necessarily in this moment, but just maybe to reflect on, what would it mean to commit to the path of the Bodhisattva? And what I find really valuable when I think about the Bodhisattva Path is that while it is a Buddhist archetype and comes out of the Buddhist tradition, we actually find bodhisattvas everywhere. You might know people in your own life who just, not coming out of a Buddhist tradition necessarily, but might, just have a heart that reaches out to help other people, to serve others, to be helpful, to be kind, to be compassionate. On the kind of more public level, you could think of people, I think of, I've long been inspired by Nelson Mandela, and being imprisoned for 27 years. And actually you can see, when you read about his time on Robben Island, how he really did transform himself. He even included meditation, that was part of his practice. And but he let go of his, a lot of his anger and resentment and against the unfairness of, being put in prison for life for being a freedom fighter, for wanting to, a decent, equal society for all races, the unfairness of that. But rather than being stuck in this is unfair, he actually opened his heart to his jailers and, the people who were persecuting him and his colleagues, and in that came to understand them and kind of saw how how they worked and actually saw their humanity, to be able to be in a position to negotiate with them, to bring about a a multiracial democracy, obviously with its challenges and its flaws, but a huge advance from the old racial separation of apartheid in South Africa. So you can look at Nelson Mandela, in that way. That kind of inner transformation leading to the outer vision of change. You can think of, I think of people like Dorothy Day working with the poor in the cities and of the United States, and in the 20th century and early middle 20th century. Mother Teresa in the street with the poor in the streets of Calcutta. Obviously Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, John Lewis, and all the kind of the heroes and sung and unsung of the civil rights movement are really examples of the Bodhisattva path in practice. And one of the things they do, certainly for me, is they point to the truth, I think, that these qualities are present in our own lives. And I think they can inspire us to cultivate those qualities in ourselves, to transform our own, unexamined places, unexamined mind states and actions, and make that commitment to change in the world, to cultivate, what Thich Nhat Hanh spoke about as cultivating the seeds, beneficial seeds, seeds of kindness and compassion and love, rather than seeds of anger and cruelty and blame, etc. And that's really the path of the Bodhisattva, is to cultivate these seeds of change, seeds of goodness. So I want to just reflect for a little bit on Dr. King, and also share a little bit from his writings. I find Martin Luther King to be, probably the clearest example of a bodhisattva, of someone who really worked to transform himself and encouraged others to work on that inner change, to cultivate love and compassion as a fundamental part of that work for change. That it couldn't just come from like, okay, identify, what are the strategies we need to do and who needs to be got rid of and who do we replace them with. Without that inner transformation, we just keep the old cycles going. So that power of inner and outer transformation, changing ourselves, being the change that we want to see in the world, as I think you sometimes read on the bumper stickers, and also working to change the world. I just want to share something from where he speaks about the power of love. One of the things about I find really, I don't know, admirable about Dr. King was that he had a real understanding of power and the importance of power. That change doesn't come without power. And sometimes in the spiritual world, it can seem like, having the right, values and morality and positions is enough. But unless you work to make the change in the world, which is about power and about effectiveness, then it doesn't change things in a material way. So this is what he says. He says power, properly understood, is the ability to achieve purpose. It's the strength required to bring about social, political, or economic changes. In this sense, power is not only desirable, but necessary in order to implement the demands of love and justice. So we have to make love and justice real in the world through power. He says one of the greatest problems of history is that the concepts of love and power are usually contrasted as polar opposites. Love is identified with a resignation of power, and power with a denial of love. So love is identified with, not being concerned about power, and power is often associated with denying love. What's love got to do with it, as the song goes. And he says, what is needed is a realization that power without love is reckless and abusive, and that love without power is sentimental and anemic. Sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice. Love implementing the demands of justice. Justice at its best is love correcting everything that stands against love. Love correcting everything that stands against love. So what's there in Martin Luther King's vision is not just is the inner transformation, but also what do we need to do? What do we need to do to make this happen? And his vision really was the vision of the beloved community. And the beloved community he saw as having to come about through non-violence as a way of life, not just as a strategy. He talks about, he said, non-violent resistance avoids not only external physical violence, but also internal violence of the spirit, internal violence of the spirit. At the center of non-violence stands the principle of love. In struggling for human dignity, the oppressed people of the world must not allow themselves to become bitter or indulge in hate campaigns. To retaliate with hate and bitterness would do nothing but intensify the hate in the world. Along the way of life, someone must have sense enough and morality enough to cut off the chain of hate. This can be done only by projecting the ethics of love to the center of our lives. So hate, just as the Buddha said, hate can't be ended with hatred. Only through love is hatred ended. This is the law, ancient and eternal, the Buddha said. Martin Luther King was saying exactly the same thing, that change has to come through non-violence, through love rather than hate. It has to include those that we might feel disposed to exclude. Not them. Why them? They're doing all of these things. Why would we include them? We include them because they are deserving of our compassion. Doesn't mean we don't call them on their harmful actions. Obviously we do, but we don't, I sometimes said we can put them out of our, we don't have to meet them for tea every day, but we don't put them out of our hearts. So the including everyone in the beloved community is another way that he shared. He says, I've seen too much hate to want to hate. And every time I see it, I say to myself, hate is too great a burden to bear. Somehow we must be able to stand up against our most bitter opponents and say, we shall match your capacity to inflict suffering by our capacity to endure suffering. We will meet your physical force with soul force. Do to us what you will, and we will still love you. but be assured that we'll wear you down by our capacity to suffer, and one day we will win our freedom. We will win not only freedom for ourselves, we will appeal to your heart and conscience that we will win you in the process, and our victory will be a double victory. So the vision of Dr. King was of the beloved community that would be grounded, that was grounded in love and compassion. And when he speaks about love, he speaks about unconditional love. He uses the Greek word agape, A-G-A-P-E, agape, which is unconditional love that seeks the good of others regardless of their actions or beliefs. I don't know if that sounds like anything to you, but to me it sounds very much like metta, like loving kindness. You know, loving kindness is unconditional. It's like I'm not, you know, I'm not caring for you or befriending you or sending you loving kindness in order to get something back for you, or there's not a condition attached to it. It doesn't, there's no conditions. It's an open heart, no matter how it's what the response is. It's the vision of the beloved community is grounded in justice and equity. You know, in a society where, you know, billionaires own as much as, you know, billions of people, you know, can there be real, you know, real equity and real, you know, dignified lives for people? You know, if the wealth is, you know, huge swaths of the wealth in the society and in the world go to a handful of people, you know, what does the rest of the world have left for education, for work, for healthcare, etc.? So it has to be grounded in justice and equity. It has to be, it's a vision that is inclusive and grounded in interconnectedness. The beloved community embraces diversity and celebrates the contributions of all people, regardless of race or gender or religion or background. And it acknowledges the interconnectedness of humanity based on respect and cooperation. So as I read and understand and reflect on Dr. King's vision, you know, where do we go from here? What do we need to do to build the beloved community? It's very much that vision, I think, of the Bodhisattva, you know, that is being expressed. I see the vision as being, you know, there isn't really daylight between the two. It reflects, I think, Dr. King's vision reflects the Bodhisattva path, and it's made very tangible, you know, you know, he's talking about, you know, campaigns to eradicate poverty, you know, and to ensure justice and civil rights, you know, so it's not just as abstractions, but actually realizing that in the world, addressing economic injustices and disparities, ensuring everyone has access to decent education, healthcare, shelter, food, work. You know, all of these things have to be grounded in, you know, and has to be grounded in power, you know, in what do we need to do to make this happen, you know, to create this community where people can live lives of dignity. And I think, you know, and just to finish off this reflection today, this evening, you know, what I came down to was WWMD. What would Martin Luther King do? You know, what in this time, you know, were he alive today, how would he respond to what happened today and where things are going and where things are already going and we know are likely to go more in the coming years? What would his response be? And based on my understanding of his life, his commitment, his dedication, it would be to resist evil, to resist harm, to resist injustice and oppression, to do that in a very strategic way, in an intelligent way. There's a lot of talk right now about resistance not being the same as it was 8 years ago. I don't see that so much as a problem. I think what's important, resistance that is not grounded in wisdom can be like a chicken running around, the head without the head, of like, I've got to respond to this and this and this and this, and, and energy being dissipated. I think, what Martin Luther King was a visionary and a strategist with a clear sense of direction. How do we get from here to there? How do we get from here to where we want to be? How do we get to the beloved community? Not as an abstract vision, but as a real human beings acting together. So what I believe he would do would be to seek the broadest possible coalition to resist harm, to resist untruth, lies, to speak up, to be willing to be courageous, but without excluding anybody, without it making anybody into the enemy, the other that has to be, destroyed or got rid of in some way. And I believe that Dr. King really is an inspiration that as alive today, perhaps today, as much as any day, with the inauguration of the new administration, where do we go from here? His question, where do we go from here? Chaos or community? And how do we build community? And, where does the Bodhisattva Path fit, for each of us individually, but also collectively? So I want to I think what I'd like to do is leave it here. And if you are willing and interested, we can do a meditation, a guided meditation. I think of this as something of a bodhisattva meditation. It'll be about 10 minutes, and then we can go on a little bit after that. So I invite you to, again, just come into a comfortable, relaxed posture. Let yourself settle. The back straight. Invite the shoulders to relax. Maybe take a few deeper breaths to help you just settle into being here. And just opening to what is present for you right now in the body and in the heart, in the mind. Make space for whatever is here right now. Meeting what's here with kindness and with acceptance. Nothing needs to be left out or pushed away. Just let everything come and go. If you can, make space for whatever is here. And I invite you now to just bring to mind a time when things were difficult for you, or perhaps an area of life right now where things might feel challenging or difficult. Could be a difficulty with a family member or a friend or at work, or a particular challenge you're facing, maybe something around health or finances, a particular relationship. Could be about what's going on in the larger, wider world right now. Just something that's challenging, something that's difficult, that kind of it might be helpful to bring attention to. So letting yourself just bring that to mind, you know, you can imagine yourself, just put yourself in that situation. It might be something that's very alive in this moment. It might be something that from a little while ago or some time ago. But just put yourself right kind of back in the middle of that. Feel it in your body, and you sense it in your mind and your heart. So right back in the middle of the situation. What does your body feel like? You know, if there's someone else or others involved, what are you saying? What are they saying, if anything? Let yourself touch into what feels most difficult in this situation. How it feels in your body, in your emotions, in your mind, your thoughts. Let yourself feel the whole situation and what it brings up for you as fully as you can. Just sensing into how it feels, what you're aware of right now. And as you're in the middle of it, you hear a knock at the door or a ring of the doorbell. Or if you are outside, you see someone approaching. And if you're with someone, you might say to them, just pardon me for a moment, and you leave the situation, go to the door or go to see who's coming. And you notice, you open or see in front of you a being of great wisdom and compassion, with a powerful energy of peace and equanimity. You know, it might be the Buddha or Jesus, Kuan Yin or Thich Nhat Hanh, Mother Teresa, Mother Mary, Dr. King, whoever it might be, some other inspiring being. Just let this being of great compassion and wisdom appear to you. And as they do, they say to you, I see you're having a difficult time. Perhaps you acknowledge, yes, yeah, it's a difficult moment, a difficult experience. And this being says to you, listen, let's try something. You give me your body for a while, and I'll take on your body, and I'll be invisible, and I'll appear as you. And let's go back into that situation. Let me show you how I might handle the situation. So here, this wise and compassionate being, whoever it is now inside of your body and goes back into the difficult situation. Picture yourself back in that difficult situation, but with this compassionate being acting and responding to the challenges, you know, to what's coming up. Feel them there and just notice how they handle the situation. What do they say or perhaps not say? What's the state of their or your body as they engage with the difficulties? How do they respond? Let them show you how they respond to the challenging situation, what they say, what they do or don't do, how they feel internally, how they hold themselves, their demeanor, their attitude. Just touching into how it feels and they're responding to the difficulties. And then they say, excuse me, to whoever they're with, and they stand up. And you follow them back to where you met them, wherever it was. And then they say to you, I'm gonna go now, but before I go, I'm going to give you something to help you remember what you've seen and learned. And they give you something, they hand you something, you look at it in front of you, take it in your hands, look at it closely. They reach out and touch your body in a healing way, then whisper some words of advice in your ear. Listen closely and hear the words of counsel, any words of counsel to you. What are the words that this wise and kind being has for you? You bow to them and thank them. You let yourself come back, bringing whatever gift and understanding with you. And sit quietly with whatever's present for you right now. We'll just sit quietly for a couple of minutes. Just holding whatever is arising in the body, the heart, the mind, with kindness, with acceptance. Just holding everyone here together in loving kindness, care, and compassion. Take your time to open your eyes, come back into the group, and love if you would, if anyone would like to share in the comments, in the chat, anything that came up for you, any gift that was given to you, any words of wisdom or kindness. Please feel free to share that in the chat. Lovely to hear if there were any visitors came to you. And if anyone would like to, maybe, are we doing the chat today?
Okay. Yes, the chat is on.
Okay, thanks. So Angie, dearly beloved, you are loved. Share this love with others. Thank you, Angie. Thank you, that's beautiful. Anyone like to share any visitors that came to them in this practice? Ellie, I saw how to meet everything and hold it lightly with loving awareness. Thank you, Ellie. Ji Yoon says, appreciate the two wings analogy, wisdom and compassion. I hope we can all be skillful, mindful strategists and work with our communities. Thank you, Ji Yoon. Yeah. Anyone, if you'd like to, I mean, if anyone would like to share with words, that is also a possibility. You know, I find this practice when I do it, and I've done it, it's a practice that I you know, had heard Jack Kornfield lead many times, you know, assisting him up at Kripalu. And, you know, there would be very, you know, amazing visitors come along, sometimes, you know, great beings, and the Dalai Lama, or sometimes people's dog or cat came along, or, you know, and great words of advice. But one of the things, I mean, the wisdom, you know, I think of this practices like these is they can kind of really remind us that these qualities are, they're in us, you know, they're within us, you know. Others can inspire us with their vision, you know, the bodhisattvas I've spoken about, but we have these qualities within ourselves. The wisdom and the clarity and the kindness and the equanimity are really in us all along. They are our true nature. In a sense, what we're seeking is already present in us. And what we need to do is really to remember, to connect with our goodness, with our Buddha nature. So, thank you, Forrest. The Holy Spirit is here now. Thank you. How are folks doing? Geraldine, did you want to? Oh, you just, no, sorry. I thought you were putting you could just, yeah. Okay. Yes, Caroline, please. Neil says the smiling Dalai Lama. Rachel, I wish healing and enlightenment for all. Progress is not linear. Thank you. That's, yeah. Caroline.
Yeah, so the being I was so surprised that came to is one of the women that was described in Michaela's Haas's Dakini power book. And it's this Tibetan woman who had gone through a lot of hardship and ended up in the United States, older woman. And despite all the hardship, there was no hatred, incredible power and poise. um, yeah, yeah, I really, really appreciated your talk, particularly that piece of advice of not dissipating your energy and just being strategic with it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Caroline.
Beautiful evening. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Anyone else like to share before we finish tonight? We've gone a little bit over. I apologize for that. And feel free if you need to leave. I do want to just let folks know. I think I've got it here that I can post it. Maybe oh yes, there we go. Actually, I posted it twice. there's an event or a program this weekend that IMCW is organizing and hosting called When the Rubber Hits the Road, Living the Dharma in Difficult Times. And, includes, some wonderful speakers, Tara Brach and Sharon Salzberg, and Kazu Haga and Bob Thurman, many others. I'm also doing a talk there. And also I want to, so that's the 24th to the 26th this weekend, Friday through Sunday. So it's a series of talks over the time. And I'm also doing a program called Embodying the Bodhisattva Path in These Challenging Times. And you can check that out. Those are both in the chat there. And there's also, it probably will be finishing now, but there's a wonderful program, Interfaith Service this evening with Bishop Barber and other speakers, a moral mass meeting, about the times we're living in. So wanted to share those with you. Sri, would you like to share something?
Hi, yeah, thank you so much for holding this session. I loved what you read and what you said. For me, I thought about, Thich Nhat Hanh coming to me and helping me. So, and I liked what you said, they give you something, to look at. That was very nice. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. But what did they give you? You don't have to tell us what they gave you, but thank you. I think we'll unless anyone has anything to share to finish. Ellie, please.
I just wanted to also share, and I'm just going to post it in the chat, that CML has an event this Wednesday, Modern Mantras. So it will have a registration link, and I've just put that in the chat for us as well.
Thank you, Ellie. And Sherry asked, when's the Bishop Barber event? It's in the chat. It's called For Such a Time as This. And I don't know what time it's going to go on till, but what, when we finish here, what you might go in there and at least hear the end of that. Yeah. So thank you, everyone. I hope this has been helpful to you on this day, and wish you sending lots of loving kindness to your way. And I hope we can keep meeting and will keep meeting in the Center for Mindful Living as a beloved community, and work through how do we respond individually and together to the times we're living in. So many blessings to each and every one of you. Thank you.